Hi guys, welcome to Unit 9, Ecosystems, Ecology. We are in Lesson 1 of Unit 9, and we're going to be taking notes on the first and second page of your note packet. So here we go. Ecology is just the study of interactions among and between organisms and their environments. So how are the animals and plants of that environment interacting with the environment? Ultimately, it's just that study of those interactions. So what are your roles in your everyday life? So think about this. If you think about SpongeBob SquarePants, his role in his environment, his everyday life, he's a fry cook, a son, a loyal friend, he's a jellyfisher, he's a heterotroph, he's a boating school student, and he's prey to some fish. So let's take a look at what a niche is. Okay, so we're going to talk about niche versus a habitat. So a niche, all right, is an organism's way of life within its environmental conditions or its role, while a habitat is surrounding environment where that organism actually lives. So an example of habitat would be like a pond, a meadow, the grasses, an oak tree, the forest, your community. So we could say Solanco school district area. We could say Quarryville, like whatever town or little area you live in is called. That is your habitat. A niche is the way of life, okay? So your role within that habitat. So this includes how an organism lives, how it obtains resources like food and water, and what conditions it can tolerate. So an example of this is a white-tailed deer. The niche for the white-tailed deer is a herbivore, so it eats plants to grasses and trees. So that is its food source. The earthworm is a decomposer of organic matter, and a fox is a carnivore to small rodents and animals. Okay, so those are examples of niches. So think about what your niche would be. So you have this chart in your notes with these three different organisms. So we got a honeybee, a lion, and a sunflower. Okay, so each of these have an image that you don't have in your notes, but this is just so you can understand what I'm talking about. And your habitat and your niche columns are what we need to fill out. Okay, so for forests, gardens, and meadows, that's where honeybees go. This is where they're going to find what they need, and their niche, what this honeybee is actually doing, its role. It's a herbivore, it's a producer of honey, and it's a pollinator. While a lion's habitat, where it lives, is the African savanna in nature, and then its niche, so its role within that environment, is a carnivore, leaves scraps for scavengers. So an example of a scavenger is a hyena. And then for sunflower, the habitat would be fields and gardens, while its niche, what it does, its role, is a producer of oxygen and food for herbivores. So pause this if you need more time. Types of niches. So we got a couple different types. We have fundamental niches, and then we have realized niches. So a fundamental niche is a range of conditions and resources that a species could potentially tolerate. So not saying that it is there, but it could potentially be there. Due to environmental conditions, such as maybe competition, organisms also have to adapt to the realized niche, which is more specific. Okay, so your realized niche is a range of conditions and resources that the species actually uses. So this is going to be much smaller than the fundamental niche, where you can see in the picture to the right here, we have the fundamental niche is between high and low tide. So it's wherever the water is going to be every 6 to 12 hours. Okay, so these are two different types of organisms. The fundamental niche is this whole area, while the realized niche is going to be the very specific area where you see the two different types of species. So this is a realized niche, and then this is a realized niche. So there are some competitive exclusion issues. So when there's two species competing for a limited resource, whether that's space or food, any type of resources, the species that uses the resource more effectively will eventually eliminate the other species. So not that they're killing them off on purpose, but they're using the resource more effectively, thus growing more and using more resources, so the other organisms, the other species that it's competing against will not have enough resource in order to survive. Okay, so no two species with the same niche can coexist indefinitely when resources are limiting. So heavy competition leads to this exclusion where one species must go. Okay, so this is where we start seeing adaptations happening because of this competitive exclusion. So species don't want to die out, so there are going to be adaptations that take place. So we have resource partitioning, character displacement, and migration. So these are things that could happen due to competitiveness. All right, so resource partitioning is when competing species coexist, but they're using different parts of the available resource. Okay, so if they're all in the same tree, like this picture on the right-hand side, not all the birds are in the same part of the tree. They use different parts of the tree, even though they're all in the same resource, which is the tree. They're able to coexist together. Character displacement is the process by which traits evolve differently among competing species. So we're going to see a trait difference. This is in response to lessen competition. Okay, so this results from resource partitioning. So because they got relocated within the same resource, you're going to start seeing traits that are optimized or in the best interest of the organism due to their area within the resource. And then you have migration, which we talked about in the last unit, which is movement of individuals out of an area, which is emigration. So we see birds migrating during the winter, where they go south during the winter and then north in the summer. So we see movement of that happening. There's migrations of many different animal species based upon where they are within the United States or even around the world. All right, here's your quick check for understanding. You should have this image in your notes. Below are two species of bacteria that thrive when grown separately. Okay, so they're doing really good separately. There are two responses to competition shown when grown together. So number 1 and number 2. What is shown in the tubes of bacteria grown together? So which one of these, which is which? We got resource partitioning, competitive exclusion, or migration. Okay? So one of them is going to die. Okay, that's competitive exclusion, so one gets excluded. Where this number 2, you see one living in one part of the test tube and the other one living in the other part of the test tube, so that's going to be resource partitioning. All right, so we talked about animals living in niches. We have different types of animals that are able to either live in broad niches, like really, really big ones, or they're classified as specialists, so they have really narrow niches. So, for example, rats, bears, and opossums have super broad niches, and they can tolerate a wide range of conditions. They eat many different things, they can live in different environments and use different resources, while an example like a koala bear or a panda is another example that only eats a certain type of food. So koalas only eat eucalyptus leaves. That's very specific. Panda bears eat bamboo. That's very specific. These are classified as specialist animals because they have narrow niches and they can only tolerate small range of condition changes. Okay, so let's take a look at these. All right, do you think they're generalists or specialists? You tell me what you think. Yep, raccoon's a generalist. It will eat anything. Specialist, this is an otter, all right? It only eats one type of food. Woodpeckers are also specialists. You are only seeing them do this one thing. This bug is a generalist. It will pretty much eat whatever. We're not sure about Taylor Swift. All right, endemic species, endemic species. So when we talk about types of species, endemic are found in its originating location. So when we say we're an endemic species, it's like if you were born here and lived here forever, then you are classified as an endemic species in that area. So it's restricted to the general geographic area. If this is an endemic species and they're not seen in a wide range, then there's a high risk of extinction due to any disruption in that particular environment. And remember, extinction means that they will be gone off the face of the planet. Okay, so here are some examples of endemic species which we are keeping an eye on, and most likely these are all on the endangered species list. Lemurs of Madagascar, they are only found on Madagascar, which is an island off the coast of Africa. Redwood forests in California. The Galapagos tortoise, we have talked about him. The Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America. Then you have conformers and regulators. So a conformer is organisms that do not regulate their internal conditions, so that means they're cold-blooded. So conformers, they conform to their environment, which are lizards, frogs, and fish. Where regulators, we have to use energy to control some of their internal conditions. So they have to keep their internal temperature up to a specific level. These are warm-blooded creatures such as birds and mammals. All right, we're quickly going to go through how do ecosystems function. We have two different groups. We have living animals and non-living. Okay, we have living factors and non-living. So living factors of the environment are like plants, animals, microbes, bacteria, different things like that. Abiotic factors are non-living, like the weather, amount of sunlight, temperature, wind, pH of the environment, wind, I already said wind, salinity, like how salty the water is that they're living in. So remember, biotic is living, abiotic is non-living, okay? So there are your biotic factors in the image. So grass, animals, plants. Abiotic factors is landscape. Okay? Can you pick out the biotic and abiotic factors in this picture? So we have levels of ecology, okay? Levels of organization. Okay, from smallest to largest, the smallest is going to be on the bottom, and then largest is going to be up top. So we have started pretty small when we talked about like the cell and different things like that. You can talk about atoms and molecules more in chemistry. That's even smaller than what we were talking about. And we've worked up through like tissues and organs, and we're talking about populations and communities and ecosystems now. Okay. So ecological levels of organization, we go from an individual organism all the way up to the entire biosphere. We're going to look at each one of these individually. So an organism is an individual. A population is a group of the same species living in the same area. So that's important. So you can't be talking about two different, you could talk about the same species but living in two separate animals. That's not, areas I mean, that's not a population. Those are two different populations then. And then a community is groups of different populations, so different species of animals that live in the same area. So we could be talking about 3 or 4 different types of species that all live in the African savanna. And then the ecosystem, all of the living, biotic, and abiotic, so living and non-living conditions of a defined area. That is your ecosystem. Okay, so your ecosystem is like Peckway Creek, a backyard pond, a meadow, a forest, a field, different things like that. And then the last two are biome and biosphere, the last two largest. So biome is a group of ecosystems that have the same climate and similar dominant communities. So you guys are going to be taking a look at different biomes later in this lesson. Examples of these are tundra, desert, and rainforest, where all of those biomes together create the biosphere. So this is a part of Earth in which life exists, including the land, the water, and air, with the animals and plants and microbes and everything. That is a biosphere. So this is your largest level. So if you take a look at this map, this is showing the world's major land biomes. If you look at the key, it actually tells you what type of biome it is. You're not going to have to memorize this or anything, but it's kind of interesting to take a look at when you are looking at the entire world overall. So even though the land masses are not connected, you can see a similarity between them based on their longitude or based on their latitude. So right now where we live, we actually live in the temperate deciduous forest biome. There's some key factors or features of this biome. We have 4 individual seasons, which we travel through in the same order. Our temperature ranges between negative 30 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius, so positive and negative. Cold winters, hot summers, so we see that those two extremes within our seasons. And what we have within this biome are broadleaf trees like oaks, maples, and beech trees, shrubs, perennial herbs, and mosses. So when you walk through the forest, you're going to see all of these things. Eastern U.S., parts of Canada, Europe, China, and Japan also have this type of biome on their surface. So again, if you take a look at this, we go from the individual and we get larger and larger until we talk about the entire biosphere. All right, so your quick check for understanding. Do the following represent an ecosystem, a community, a population, or an organism? So you got an organism, an ecosystem with everything in it, a population with one species in a group, and then a community with multiple species in the same area. So we're going to be talking about how energy is transferred through an ecosystem in lesson 2, but that's it for lesson 1. So we will see you in class very soon, and hope you're having a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.